This episode is brought to you by Startup Edition, a gathering of accomplished founders, hackers, and designers sharing their knowledge and experience building a startup. Visit startupedition.com and subscribe for weekly wisdom.
We all have big ideas, but very few of us ever put in the effort to make them become a reality. This is a video series where I interview inspirational people who are trying to do just that. This is Reality Makers.
Cool. So I'm here with Wade Foster. And Wade, where are you at right now, you said?
I'm up in Mountain View, California.
Mountain View, right on. So you're in the Silicon Valley.
Yeah, the heart of.
And so tell us a little about who you are. What are you doing today? Or these days, I should say.
Yeah, so I'm co-founder and CEO of a company called Zapier. It's just a really easy way to automate a lot of your dirty work, basically. So you can do cool stuff like, create Trello cards from email or save, unbounced leads to GoToWebinar. Just connect all these different, SaaS services together to automate a lot of work that you kind of do already on a normal basis. But, for a lot of people, they can recapture, a couple hours each week, and it's worth a lot to them.
Very cool. How many different services have you intertwined together today?
So we've got, I think, around 220 last count. It's on the homepage, so I haven't looked at it recently.
Yeah, it's a massive number. I was checking it out a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
So how the heck did you get into entrepreneurship? So Zapier right now is a pretty hot company. You hear a lot of people talking about what it's like the if this then that for businesses, which is obviously a huge market. But how did you get here today? Like what spurred your interest in entrepreneurship to begin with?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'm not one of those guys, a lot of entrepreneurs, they tell these stories about how when they were 8 years old, they're like hustling candy bars on the playground and stuff like that. That definitely was not me. So I grew up in a pretty conservative town in Missouri. My dad owned his own business, but I didn't really didn't know much about it because he traveled a lot. My mom was a pharmacist, so I wasn't exposed to entrepreneurship kind of very young at all. Basically my first kind of foray into it was through music. So I ended up starting to play saxophone when I was in middle school and got pretty good at it. And I joined a quartet that kind of gigged around town at different places. We ended up getting to play for the governor's mansion in Missouri and do all sorts of kind of cool stuff that for a high school student at the time when I was doing this, that was pretty awesome. And we would set our own rates and have to get gigs ourselves. And so that was the first time I was ever really selling any skill set that I had. But I really wasn't even thinking of that as entrepreneurship at the time. That was just music to me. That was just having fun. And so even when I went to college, I was kind of thinking, okay, well what's the safest easiest route that I can get to have this nice easy lifestyle.
The rock star lifestyle.
Yeah, and so I went and started. I was an engineering major, and I was like, I'll just be an engineer. Those guys make 80 grand, coming out of school. So
which field did you focus on?
Easy. So industrial engineering, kind of efficiency, automation, kind of is the core behind that. And so I just was all right, I'll just do that. And there wasn't really a ton of thought or decision that went into it, honestly. And then I went and did my first internship.
An easy field, right? I mean, you had to have some kind of drive to be wanting to get into that in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of did the things that people told you were supposed to do, right? It's hey, if you get good grades, you go do a smart, hard major, you're gonna be successful, right? I didn't know what I was gonna do, but I was people say this is good, so I'll just do that, right? I didn't really question much. And then about I think it was either my sophomore or junior year, I had my first internship at Big Corp, right? And it was terrible. I hated every last minute of it. There was just spreadsheets and all sorts of boring stuff. And probably the worst thing was I would spend maybe 15, 30 minutes a day, doing actual work. And my bosses loved it. They thought I was awesome at this stuff. And I was like, seriously, that's I can't imagine doing this for 40 more years, right? Like that's got to be terrible. So like when I went back to school, I was like, oh crap, like I don't know, like what am I gonna do now? So I started kind of, just doing more random stuff. So like I, started reading up on like, online marketing, started trying to, kind of, I like read about like these people making money online. I was like kind of the scammy side of the internet a little bit, right? But like it attracts your attention. And so I actually teamed up with a company in Colombia that was like 6 people at the time, and they were all engineers. And I was like, well, I'm actually kind of interested in the marketing side. Like I just was like going to do something completely different than what I had already done before, right?
There's something cool about being able to put things on the internet and kind of capture people's attention.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was like, I'm a numbers guy. Like marketing online is all about numbers. Like, but it's not engineering. I was like, I wanted something completely different. And I didn't know a ton about it, but like I knew enough, and I'm like a smart guy and I can read and learn stuff pretty quickly. It's a really good fit for me with these people because they didn't know anything about marketing either, and I didn't know anything about marketing, so they couldn't call me on like stuff. So I just like would suggest all sorts of things. So I learned how to do AdWords, I learned how to do email marketing, I learned like organic stuff, like I learned how to do social. I mean, I learned like a lot about, not very deep, but I learned like kind of cursory level stuff about a ton of different marketing stuff, and got pretty good at some of them. And ultimately, I was like, man, this stuff is actually a lot of fun. I love working in a small company.
Just to get
I love doing marketing. This was like 2008 or 9, so 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
I was like really getting into this stuff, and I kind of just decided at that point in time, it's like, yeah, I really do want to own my own business. Like I want to do this for myself because like it was so much fun, like being able to kind of control your own destiny, right? And so that's when I really thought like, I can turn entrepreneurship into like something that I do like every day, and not like, it's not something that's like unattainable, like that's only for, the Steve Jobses and the Bill Gates of the world. It's something like even somebody like me could kind of reach out and, do something with it.
Very cool. All the way from Missouri.
Yeah, from Missouri. So I was, yeah.
So, so obviously so what was this next business that you did? So we all kind of know now you and a couple other people got into Y Combinator, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But obviously
so
that wasn't,
there,
you didn't go straight from college to there. You had some steps.
Yeah, no. So I graduated from college in 2010, and I was still working at that startup. Then after that, I teamed up with, I kind of was always doing like some stuff on the side. Nothing that ever was like very major or anything like that. But I started to like teach myself how to code because I was like, well, if I'm ever going to be able to do anything, I need to like know how to like build a website and like build a web app and things like that. And so that's ironically, actually, when I reached out to my now co-founder, Brian Helmig, I was like, hey, man, I knew him because he actually played music, too. So like I told you like how he's, played saxophone. Well, he's also a jazz musician, was in Colombia. So I knew him from there, and I knew he built like WordPress sites and something like that. I was like, hey, man, like, I know you do like this internet thing. I'm trying to like learn how to do Django. Can you like show me a few tips and tricks?
Wow, that's crazy because I feel like, having a co-founder today is always a huge thing, right? You can't do it all on your own. So it's pretty amazing how this was just completely on a whim. Why him?
So, it was because I knew him sort of like through music scene. Like we didn't hang out a ton, but I was like, this guy, I looked at his like portfolios, like it looks pretty good. He clearly knows his stuff. He'd like written a little bit about it. Plus he was into music and I was into music. So I was like, well, if nothing else, like we have something else in common.
Right.
We can just like chat out. So I was like, hey, let's go like meet up for like lunch or dinner or something, and we'll like, we can just chat. So, we kind of like, we hit it off. Like we started talking startups, started talking,
Would you
web
say you're
apps,
pretty fortunate that you guys get along so well from the beginning?
Oh yeah, it's definitely, it's definitely a good match for the two of us, because even if we weren't doing Zapier together, like we'd still be friends, just because we're just into a lot of the same things.
Yeah, that's very cool.
I think that's how. Yeah, I think that's how like a lot of the best kind of co-founder relationships work, is when there's like something more that connects the two of you than just your startup.
Sure. Yeah, no, I've heard people say it's a marriage in some ways because you're going to spend
Yeah.
more time with that person, right, than you are possibly with your actual spouse or something. So,
Yeah, I mean that's sometimes true.
and you'll fight just as much, maybe too.
Yeah.
So, would you say that as a person, you're like, what type of founder are you? You know, there's like the marketing type, the hacker type, the like, and do you and your co-founder kind of balance each other out in that regard too?
Yeah, so I'm mostly kind of a marketing product oriented founder. And Brian is more on like the deep technical back end side. And then Mike, my third co-founder, is more front end design, product oriented. So in a lot of ways, our skills are pretty complementary to each other. So the stuff that I suck at, they're a lot better at, and then vice versa. So it kind of covers the gaps just in places where we might not is good at. Obviously, there's still like tons of things that like between the three of us we aren't awesome at, but like we're all smart enough that we can kind of figure out how to make that stuff happen until like the company grows, until we can like bring people on to help out and plug those other holes.
Very cool. So was Zapier something you guys brought to Y Combinator to start with? Or was this something that was fostered out of Y Combinator?
So no, we actually had been working on Zapier for I think 8 or 9 months before we ever went to Y Combinator. It was an idea that Brian and Mike and I had been kind of toying over for a while. One of the things that had sucked for me as a marketer was that I always felt like to do simple things like move people from an email list into our CRM, or like send out these like automated emails. Like it felt like very simple, stupid stuff to me that was like really effective though. Like I could like do like that really simple stuff and make a lot of money doing it. But to actually make it happen, I had to like go like pull in developers and be like, hey, can I just use the script or whatever? Can you like build like this small thing for me? And they're like, no, I've got all this other stuff that I got to do right now. And so it's just like, it was too hard for like regular people to do like those simple automation type things.
Yeah, regardless, it was just
that,
a pain in the ass.
they kind of wanted to do.
Yeah,
exactly. And then Brian, on the flip side, he'd been building like a couple SaaS products, nothing that was like major, but a couple $1,000 a month here or there. And customers were already always asking him for like integrations with other products. And he was like the typical developer. He's like, I can't do that. I got to work on my own product, right? So between him and then Mike had been working on the Facebook developer platform like very early on, since like 2007, was like really into like the API ecosystem. So between the three of us, it was like, man, there should be like a product that exists that lets people kind of do this stuff without having to, talk to developers or like spend out, $4,000 or $5,000 to, basically get this custom work done. And so that's kind of like was the very first, nugget of an idea in our heads. And that was back in like July of 2011.
Okay.
Then we actually took it to a startup weekend in Colombia and built like the initial prototype there in October of 2011. And after the weekend, we just kept working on it. And so we worked for like 8 months. 3 of those, like it was me doing like nights and weekends sort of thing as a day job, like balancing it with a day job and stuff like that. So eventually, like we started each peeling off one by one to go full time on Zapier. And by the time we applied to Y Combinator, we were all working on it. We had like a full-fledged.
Had you guys kind of validated the idea prior to Y Combinator? Was this something, you know what I mean?
Not much.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we'd kind of done a little bit of like cursory research on the internet. You could like see people complaining about lack of integration on the internet between different products, but it wasn't something that needed a ton of validation. Integration is something that's been like around for forever, right? All these legacy softwares back in decades ago like had to hook up and do stuff and talk to each other. It's not a like novel concept at all.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
But what's novel about our approach is like, what's novel about the approach is that you can kind of do it at scale. You can connect all these different things. And so rather than, developers or third-party SaaS services or whatever, like doing all these one-off things, like there's one company that's kind of like tying them all together. So that was kind of like the novel angle on it that we had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's it's unique. I think the new software as a service, it's harder to validate your ideas, but this one, it just makes sense. Integration is something that, costs a lot of money. So solving that thing that costs a very pricey penny is obviously a good place to go.
Yeah, so we'd found forums online where people were complaining about stuff like this, and we just we drop a link and say like, hey, I'm working on this project. If you're interested in it, come talk to us.
Very cool. So that was kind of the first like grassroots marketing efforts.
Yeah, it was like we were just trying to get people into our funnel, just to talk to us, do like basic customer development stuff, and the first people we talked to, and some of them ended up being like our first paying customer.
Awesome.
So we one of the novel things we also did, being from Missouri, where there isn't a lot of venture capital, there's not a lot of money to be had. It's like you have to build a paying, like profitable business from day one. So we're like, well, people are going to pay us. Like that's just how it's going to be, right? So even our beta customers paid us some amount of money to use the product. And
That's
so
awesome.
from those links in those forums and stuff, we'd get on the phone and I'd say, hey, it's going to be $100 to get into the beta. Like that'll last for the entire length of the beta. It's like a huge deal because like you can't get this stuff for less than $100 anywhere else. But it helps me know that like it's like a big enough problem for you to pay some amount of money for. So like it was kind of like this mutually helpful relationship. That was the thing that like felt good to me, right? It felt like $100 is like significant, right? Like it's not chump change, it's not like $5 that you pay at McDonald's or whatever, but it's not like so much that like any like normal business like who has this problem would clearly pay $100 for something like this. That's just that's what I kind of rationalized in my head. So that's why we're like, well, it's going to be $100 to get into the beta. Because I felt like if it was a big enough problem, you would easily pay that amount of money for it.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that mindset. So, so what was the experience of like applying to Y Combinator? How'd you guys do it? Because obviously it's super competitive. You guys felt like you had a pretty novel idea, and you felt like this was a cool opportunity. So like, what made you do it, and how did you make it happen?
Sure. So, we're all PG fans, and right after Startup Weekend, we actually applied the first time because just kind of on a whim, just to see. And we didn't get in. We didn't have much at the time, though. It was just really like the prototype that we built out, and like no customers, no nothing. So like there wasn't, the first time it wasn't unexpected that we got like the friendly decline letter from PG and crew. Then come the next time around, we were actually like seriously debating it, right? We kind of reached this fork in the road where, we could easily build, a solid lifestyle, SaaS business. It wouldn't be like we were like well on our ways to doing it. We hadn't raised any money, we've done it completely bootstrapped, and we were making money and doing just fine. Or, we could have said like, hey, we can actually build a little bit more with this. It's like we can take it kind of a bit to the next level. And ultimately, we took a trip out to the Valley. We kind of liked it. We felt that, we could do more here simply because of a lot of our partners are out here. And so it was a great way to like, have access to a bigger ecosystem. So we were like, well, let's apply to Y Combinator because we didn't know like any other way to do it, right?
Did you have any of those
if we wanted to raise money, like
did you have any of those partnerships prior to
We
Y
did.
Combinator?
We did.
Okay.
We had like, we probably had like 20 or 30 that were doing really well. But it was just like, it felt like it could be easier, right? With some external validation other than like, hey, we're these like 3 random guys from Missouri.
Well, that's what I was going to say is like, how hard
having
is it?
Something like,
how hard is it to build those relationships, like either for your business or to reach out to customers?
For customers, it was really like customers didn't care, right? They didn't care if we could have been in Zimbabwe for all they cared. That wasn't a big deal. But for partners, it was kind of a thing, right? So, they kind of would, whether they liked it or not, they would judge you kind of based on, the seriousness of the company. And 3 random guys in Missouri just didn't sound as serious as like, Silicon Valley, like Y Combinator funded company.
Of course.
And we saw it a few times. Like it wasn't, not everyone was like this, but a handful of companies, they'd ask like what you were doing, and you could hear like kind of an audible letdown when they found out like it wasn't like a big deal. And like that was lame for us because like we felt like, you know, we could do this anywhere in the world. It didn't matter to us. But at the same time, we're like realistic, right? And we need every we needed every card to play in the book if we wanted to make this work. So if there was some advantage that we could get by, you know, going the Silicon Valley route, going through Y Combinator, like we would be foolish not to take it. So that was kind of like what ultimately led to us applying to Y Combinator. Is we thought, well, like that is going to open up a lot of doors, or just make it easier to open up doors. I think we could have eventually opened up all the doors that we have now, but it was just easier to do it that way.
Did you feel there was any kind of risk in making that leap? Do you know what I'm saying? Because you were pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's a risk in running your own company bootstrapped. I mean, it could fail someday, also, right? But obviously, taking on some VC money, trying to take it to the next level, is obviously a big risk.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was like some amount of risk, but like with YC, you know, they make it pretty clear, like they're looking kind of big winners, right? They want to have like the Dropbox, the test. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're back.
Can you hear me, Corey? All right, good. So what I was saying was through YC, you know, they're obviously looking for, you know, kind of the big, you know, hits, things like Dropbox and Airbnb and Heroku. But they're also, you know, kind of stamp themselves as founder friendly. So, you know, successful startups are, you know, even companies like Wufoo, who exited for 35 million to SurveyMonkey, but didn't end up raising a ton of money. Like that's still that's still a victory for them. So they don't encourage founders to do anything that they wouldn't want themselves. So like that made it easy knowing that, you know, we still had complete control over our company, you know. Even if we did take a little bit of money, like they were still going to be rooting for us and wanting to succeed, even if we did try and take like an unconventional route a little bit.
Very cool. Would you say that
I
it's
think
something
that
if I had,
you know, knowing that, like it makes it an easy choice.
Cool. Would you say if I had like a startup idea and I'm running it, it's seeing some kind of success, it just wouldn't hurt to maybe apply to YC just every year anyways?
Oh yeah, I 100%, like 10 times out of 10, like we would go through YC again. All the partners there are super knowledgeable. You know, it's just an experience that it's like, I mean, it would be hard to replicate that like by yourself. And so like, I mean, I think it is, you know, I think we would have been successful without Y Combinator. But I certainly don't think we would be, you know, quite as far along as we are today.
Yeah. It like multiplied your knowledge. Just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like an accelerator in the truest definition of the word.
So what's the most difficult thing you guys have faced so far? Have you guys had any really troubling experiences?
So, you know, there's like there's nothing that's been, you know, super hard, right? Like, you know, earth shattering stories of, you know, credit cards are like maxed out or anything like that. You know, I think a lot of it is just, you know, we're first time founders. And so a lot of stuff is just new to us. So, you know, things like, you know, hiring, you know, your first employee is always like a big deal. And it's like, you know, you go in like eyes wide open and, you know, there's been times where things have been like challenging, right? So, you know, building, like we're a distributed team, which was one of the things that that kind of sets us apart a little bit from a lot of companies. And like building culture is like a really challenging thing to do as a distributed team. And so we spend a lot of time like thinking how we can do that and how, you know, we can make sure that we can keep, you know, 7 people around, you know, the globe kind of on the same page for the same product at the same time. And so like that kind of stuff is like hard, but it's not like earth-shatteringly difficult. There's still companies out there that have done that, and it's not like, you know, it's easy to learn from them. So I think that's a lot of we've tried to take like the way we've tried to grow the business has been like small but manageable steps at a time, right? So not like get too far ahead of ourselves to where like we're out of control, but still like big enough steps that like we feel just a little bit uncomfortable with like how far ahead we are. And then like as we get a little bit more comfortable, we know it's time to like push the push it a little bit further than kind of we have gone so far.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we've taken things, and that's just like our approach to growing the business. I know other people would have like, maybe have gone faster, maybe been more conservative, but we take a pretty like modest approach to kind of pushing the envelope.
Was there, would you say there's any risk you guys have taken in order to get where you're at today? Or, I mean, how has life enabled you to be able to, did you give up college or school? Because, I don't, or is it just had dominoes?
Yeah.
Just kind of
So,
had a really good effect
one
for
of the
you?
biggest things that was a big risk for the three of us. So, all three of us have significant others. So I'm married, Brian is married, and Mike has a fiance. And so, when it came time to applying for YC and moving out to the Valley, it wasn't just, the three of us like deciding, hey, we're startup nerds, like we should go make this happen, right? There was like three other, fantastic women in our life that we have to, convince that this is the right move, right?
No, that's huge. I completely agree.
And, yeah, I mean, that's like, it's a big deal for them to, leave their established, lives in Colombia and, pick up and move out here. That's a lot of trust in us and in the company and what we're trying to achieve. And that's a huge risk, right? That's putting, three potential relationships on the line. And, those are, any one of those relationships fails, that like puts the company a little bit at risk, just because that's going to affect any founder if something were to happen there. Ultimately it's worked out fantastic, and I think that's like a testament to how awesome
Totally.
our three significant others are. And so, but I mean, I can't say that was like the easiest decision to make. I know for Chelsea and I, it was a tough decision, and I can't speak for Brian and Mike, but I'm sure they would say the same.
Sure. Yeah. It's a blessing to have the support of your family like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Without a doubt. So what are some of the most amazing things that have happened for you guys today, or things you're really excited about maybe in the coming future right now?
The most like exciting thing is, just like being able to control your own destiny. Like I go back to, 5 years ago, I was telling you, when I worked for that, Big Corp or whatever, that was like the most miserable thing, in my life. And now like today I feel like, hey, I really have like, kind of have a shot like to control basically my own destiny. And I feel like even if this company were to fail and were to like completely tank, which I don't think is gonna I don't feel like that can happen at this point. I still feel like I could make something else happen with another company, just because of how much I've learned and how much I understand about how entrepreneurship works and how like software companies work. And to me, like that's really exciting. But then also like it's really exciting to be like growing Zapier. We just brought on our 7th person. Like we're probably going to be at 10 by the end of the year. And it's just like, it's really fun to build a product that has like a meaningful impact on all of our customers' lives. And then to also be able to do it with, 7 other people who love doing this, and hopefully more. So I think that's just really fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any tools that you use today? Like what kind of software do you use as a co-founder that's spread about the world? I mean, it's, obviously it's funny, you're building a solution for all these other businesses, but what do you do for yourself?
Yeah, so that's one of the awesome things about building a company that connects a lot of tools is that I get to use a lot of tools on a day-to-day basis. So I get to see a lot of things, and we end up using a lot of stuff that a lot of other companies end up using too, just because like it's good software. And the software we do use, it ends up fitting us like well for the stage of the company we're at. So, we use things like GitHub to kind of, to deploy and host code. And
how do you decide what tools to use? Do you just kind of try it out and set it?
Yeah, I think it's like with software these days, it's so easy to use and buy and like try software. There's like no reason you shouldn't be happy with like what you have, because you can like, you get a 30-day free trial, and it's so like, even like expensive software is like really cheap, right?
Yeah.
If in like 3 months you decide you don't want it anymore, just like switch to something else. Like it's not a big deal. So even if it costs like $100 or whatever, 3 months you spent $300, for a company, like that's not a huge deal. If you have employees, right, you're paying them way more money. So, if like your employees are happy with the tools you're using, they're going to be way more productive anyway. So it's more about just like trying stuff, finding things that you like, finding things that makes you more efficient, and kind of like helps you manage your day and manage like whatever tool product you're building better are the tools we end up using.
I think I saw you mentioned you guys use Squiggle. Is it Squiggle?
Yeah. So we've used Squiggle
I think that's really interesting. I don't know if many people know about it, but it's like a really neat way to work remotely but together. I guess that's a way.
Yeah. So Squiggle is kind of like Skype or like Google Hangout, except for that it's like persistent, but rather than video being on all the time, it just like has kind of it takes a quick like picture of what is in front of your monitor every like 8 seconds or so. So you can kind of see, like, we use it kind of like as a water cooler thing, and to kind of like put a little bit of physical location back into our working day. So you can see like, hey, well, James is at his desk right now, so I know that he's working. And not in the sense of like Big Brother working, but more in the sense of like, hey, I can ask you a question right now. Because we're really bad at like setting our away messages on chat, right? So like I'll say that I'm here, but like I'm clearly not at my desk. And so it's nice for people to like look at Squiggle and be like, he's clearly not at his desk. Like he's not just blowing me off when I sent like that, quick chat message to him. So it's kind of like really handy for that sort of thing. Just like, to get a good sense of like camaraderie. People are like working together on the same thing. It's just easy to like click in and like, be talking with someone in like 2 seconds if you need to be. So that's why we like Squiggle.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah, no, it's been a common thing. I've been talking to a lot of these startup founders, and remote working is huge, but it's also really difficult. So I find Squiggle being a really neat way to kind of bring that camaraderie together.
Yeah, for sure.
So how did you go about hiring your first employee? Obviously, like you said, it's a big thing, and you're trying to grow, but you want to get somebody that matters. Why did you choose this person? Maybe that's too personal, but what was that experience kind of like?
No, yeah. So we'd gotten to a point where I would spend roughly 60% of my day doing customer support. Now I think customer support is great. I still do customer support every day, some amount of it, but 60% is a lot of one person's time. So it was like clearly evident we need some help in that area.
Now, is that because of the level with which you entertain your relationships? Is that what you mean? Like you guys definitely are like very, you interact directly with the customer. It's not like some message.
Yeah, these are like people like emailing into us or like filling out our support form saying like, I have a question about X, or like, can you show me how to do Y, or what have you? It's like they're trying to use our product, and for whatever reason they have a question about it. Maybe it's something we're not like, they're confused about the product. Maybe it's a feature request. Maybe it's, who knows what it is. It can be any number of things. And it's just like trying to be responsive to those people. I think that's like a good thing to do, because they've like taken time out of their day to like try your product. I feel like that's like the least that you can do is like give them the time of day to help them out. And so we started to look for someone to help out on that front. And we ended up actually hiring an old roommate of mine from a few years back in college. And it kind of ended up being one of those things where like I'd stayed in touch with him, on and off over the course of the years. Knew he was like wanting to get into like more entrepreneurship style stuff, like get into the startup scene, but he was still working at like Megacore. And I just said like, hey, we've got this role. Like, I think it would be like a nice soft way for you to like kind of get your feet wet in this like world. Are you interested in like helping us out? And it was really as simple as that. Honestly, he didn't like, there wasn't much convincing that needed to be done, because like I said, we'd stayed in touch, and I knew that he would like, that's how like Micah came on board.
Cool. So if you were to meet somebody like myself, or somebody that really wants to try and make a startup, they have a big idea, and they came up to you and said, hey, how do I do what you did? Is there really a plan that somebody could follow, or is there any kind of advice you would give them to get to where you're at today?
I mean, I know it's cliche, but the biggest thing is like, just start doing something, right? Like, I think a lot of times people spend a ton of time thinking about stuff that is like not important, right? They're like, I got to raise a whole bunch of money, hire a bunch of people, and like I got to get lawyers and accountants and like file like with the government and like all this, all this stuff that like that is important, but like it's not really like helping your company be successful. It's not like getting customers. So like, if you've got an idea for something, like go find someone who would be a customer and sell them that thing. It's
or
like,
vice versa. Go find somebody that has a problem and solve it for.
yeah. I mean, it's as simple as that,
Yeah,
right? Like, just do something that like whatever your idea is, like start making that thing happen, and make sure that there's like users or customers or what have you, like to back that up. Don't spend 6 months working on something by yourself and like only to realize that was not like a good idea. Like day one, like get people like working with you.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's cool. Cool. So what's next for Wade Foster? I know you're working on a blog, and you had a really interesting post about whether you wanted to do your own like a blog for yourself or a blog for the company, which I thought was kind of interesting. So it kind of looks like you're working on growing an audience. What's kind of next in your mind? Like, where would you like to see Zapier go? And what do you hope to be yourself, let's say, in a few years?
Yeah, well, I mean, 100% of my time is like spent focused on building Zapier. So, anything that I do that like isn't necessarily like associated with Zapier, even like my own personal blog, it's still like with the intention of helping Zapier out some way or somehow. And so, yeah, I mean, even in the next 5 years, like 5 years from now, like Zapier's going to be like, bigger than it is today, and that's what I'll be focused on. And it's just hitting like making sure that we're hitting like consistent growth every single month. We have like a number that we want to hit, and like just focusing in on that so that we can keep growing a company that we like. I think that's another big thing that we want to make sure we do too. Like, is we hit growth, but also make sure that like growth isn't at the sake of ruining the good thing that we have going on with the company too. So I think a lot of it is keep building a company that we enjoy showing up to every day, and working hard and having fun solving problems for our customers.
Cool.
Because that's who we're here for.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Well, Wade, it was a pleasure talking with you. I thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, Corey, thanks for having me. Good luck with the show.
All right, thanks, man. Take care.
Yeah.
All right,
bye.
bye.
Are you a reality maker, know somebody that is, or want to sponsor this show? Visit my website, corey1.com, to learn more.